The news did not arrive through a public announcement or a dramatic courtroom ruling. It came inside a sealed legal briefing, spoken in a quiet room, where every word carried the force of a royal earthquake. Diana's private estate, the lawyers confirmed, had never been intended to drift into the wider monarchy. It had been quietly promised to William's children, and Camilla understood at once what that promise excluded. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles entered the Windsor meeting expecting a review, not a decision that would reopen a family wound. Camilla sat beside him, while William and Catherine took their places across the table. The briefing concerned a private estate, meaning property owned personally rather than by the crown, and that mattered because the monarch could not claim or redefine it. The lawyers had examined trusts, jewelry instructions, financial holdings, letters, photographs, and family records tied to Diana. The lead solicitor opened a file and spoke without hesitation. Diana's private estate had been placed under a binding family arrangement, promising its future benefit and control to George, Charlotte, and Louis. William did not react, yet the future king felt the weight of hearing his mother's wishes declared before the woman whose presence had shaped so much of her pain. Catherine noticed his jaw tighten and kept her hand near his, offering support silently. Camilla changed first. She gripped the table as the meaning settled over her. Her household could not display the possessions, reshape their story, transfer them, or speak for the legacy attached to them. The queen consort had secured her place beside Charles, but this decision drew a line that rank and marriage could not cross. The moment mattered because it separated Diana's memory from royal power and protected the next generation from rivalry. A second lawyer placed another folder beside the first. The promise, he explained through a documented estate instruction, had been reinforced years later, making any challenge harder. Charles asked whether the king possessed authority to revise it. The answer came immediately. The estate had been designed to remain beyond royal discretion. Camilla slowly removed her hand from the folder when the solicitor said, "This property does not pass through the sovereign." She looked toward Charles, but he did not meet her eyes. William then noticed 3 handwritten names on the final page: George, Charlotte, and Louis, followed by a sentence the lawyers had not yet read aloud. But the legal promise was only the beginning, because the 3 children named in that room carried very different parts of Diana's unfinished story. To the palace, George, Charlotte, and Louis represented the monarchy's future. To Diana's estate, they represented something far more intimate, the continuation of a family line she feared might one day be absorbed by the crown. Each child had been named for a reason, and as William listened to those reasons, the legal briefing became painfully personal. This was no ordinary inheritance. It was a message sent across generations. William lowered his eyes as the solicitor turned to George first. The eldest child would become guardian of the estate's continuity, a role meaning he must protect its history without surrendering it to the control of the royal household. That duty mattered because Diana's private memory could otherwise be reshaped by the institution around him. It also mattered because George would one day inherit public responsibility, yet this legacy asked him to defend something personal. Charlotte's name followed. The lawyer explained through the estate schedule that she would hold a connection to Diana's jewelry, correspondence, and objects linked to her charitable work. Catherine felt the air tighten. She knew these items were not possessions. They carried the voice of a woman her daughter would never meet. Camilla heard the words differently. The queen consort understood that Diana had imagined a granddaughter standing inside a circle of memory no later consort could enter. Louis came last, and William's control nearly broke. He had been included so he would never feel secondary, forgotten, or pushed to the edge of his grandmother's story. The prince had spent his childhood learning how hierarchy could turn love into comparison. Catherine reached beneath the table and took his hand. Recognizing that the lawyers were not explaining inheritance, they were exposing his mother's fear that royal order might divide her descendants as it had divided so many before them. A protective clause deepened the silence. A clause is a binding section inside a legal document, and this one prevented spouses, consorts, palace departments, and future household officials from claiming authority over the children's inheritance. Charles stiffened because the restriction trapped him between his present marriage and his first wife's wishes. Camilla remained still, realizing the boundary reached beyond her. No future queen consort would control Diana's name. William stepped away when the meeting paused, and stood alone with the page listing the children. Catherine joined him without speaking. After several seconds, he whispered, "She made sure they would know her." The lawyers then reopened the file, and revealed that the arrangement had begun after one specific palace incident. And when that forgotten incident was finally named, the room discovered that Diana's promise had been born not from sentiment alone, but from fear. Years before lawyers spoke the children's names inside Windsor, one private confrontation changed the fate of Diana's estate. It happened after a royal memorial planning dinner, when a senior household official suggested that her personal possessions might eventually be absorbed for continuity. Diana heard those words and immediately understood the danger. Her life had already been controlled by royal machinery. She would not allow her memory to be controlled by it too. Diana returned to Kensington Palace, carrying more anger than she allowed anyone to see. Her solicitor, financial advisor, and one trusted family representative were waiting for a private dinner meant to discuss the long-term protection of her belongings. A solicitor is a lawyer who prepares and manages legal arrangements, and this meeting mattered because privately owned property could be protected in ways Crown-controlled collections could not. It also mattered because Diana feared that future palace officials might turn personal memory into institutional display. The earlier proposal still echoed in her mind. A senior official had suggested cataloging several privately owned pieces as institutional heritage, a phrase that could blur the line between Diana's possessions and royal property. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Her jewelry and letters, he said, might one day be managed for the convenience of the next royal household. Diana pushed back her chair. She placed her napkin beside an untouched plate and told the solicitor that no future household, especially one formed after her departure, would decide how William and Harry remembered her. The advisor warned that such restrictions could be interpreted as hostility. She answered that protecting her sons and their future families mattered more than avoiding palace resentment. The room fell silent. Diana instructed the solicitor, through a documented account of that dinner, to begin drafting an estate structure favoring her descendants directly. An estate structure is a legal plan controlling who benefits from personal property and who may manage it. Her private legacy would not pass through royal offices, where officials could reframe, lend, or absorb it. Diana lifted a fountain pen and signed the first instruction. She hesitated over the final line, then wrote by hand, "They must inherit the truth of who I was." Years later, after William became a father, the arrangement was strengthened to name George, Charlotte, and Louis, and shield them from spouses, courtiers, and institutional reinterpretation under any future reign. Camilla returned the room to the present by challenging whether one handwritten instruction could truly bind a modern royal family. William finally turned toward her. The question had been asked in legal language, but William heard something far more personal, and he was no longer willing to remain silent. For years, William and Camilla had survived by respecting an unspoken boundary. Diana's name could be acknowledged, but never used as a weapon between them. Inside that legal chamber, the boundary collapsed. Camilla questioned the arrangement's fairness. William heard a challenge to his mother's final protection. Charles remained between them, but even the king could not stop the confrontation that had waited decades to happen. Camilla leaned forward before the silence could settle. She argued that a private estate carrying historical weight could not sit beyond the sovereign's household. A sovereign is the reigning monarch, and the point mattered because anything linked to Diana carried power inside the family and emotion outside it. The solicitor answered at once. Historical value did not turn personal property into crown property, nor did public fascination erase Diana's legal right to choose beneficiaries. Camilla kept her voice steady, but the hurt was unmistakable. She told William she was not trying to claim Diana's possessions, yet she would not accept being treated as though her presence poisoned every decision about the former princess. The prince answered just as firmly. The exclusion was not his invention. His mother had drawn that line because she feared her private identity would be rewritten by those who remained after her. Charles listened in silence, knowing the argument no longer concerned objects alone. It concerned who had the right to define memory inside the monarchy. Camilla then asked the question that shattered what restraint remained. Did he truly believe she would erase Diana? William paused, then said, "Erasure did not always arrive through destruction. Sometimes, it came through careful presentation, polished language, and selective memory." Charles stepped in, urging them to stop before grief became cruelty. But William had already taken up the handwritten instruction. A handwritten instruction is a personal note added to a legal arrangement, and he read aloud the line declaring that no future royal household should decide how his children encountered their grandmother's life. Camilla rose and faced him with no aid between them. "You have already judged me," she said. William laid the page on the table and answered, "This decision was made before I had the power to judge anyone." Charles watched his wife's composure fracture, and his son's grief harden into resolve. He reached toward her, but she stepped away before he touched her arm. Then the lawyer, from the briefing record, revealed that control of the estate belonged not to William, the king, or the palace, but to an independent protector. The argument had exposed the wound, but the next name spoken in that room would determine who possessed the power to enforce Diana's final boundary. Royal authority filled the room, yet none of it could unlock Diana's estate. The king could not command it. William could not accelerate it. Camilla could not influence it. Control belonged to a private estate protector, appointed to enforce the arrangement without fear of royal pressure. When the lawyers revealed who had accepted that responsibility, the conflict shifted instantly, from a family disagreement into a battle against a structure designed never to bend. Eleanor Harcourt entered the discussion through a documented legal appointment signed years earlier. She had once advised Diana's representatives on keeping personal assets from being absorbed into palace control, and now she served as the independent protector. A protector is the person empowered to defend a trust from pressure or misuse, while trustees are the people who manage its property under fixed rules. That structure mattered because it placed the children's interests above royal rank, and it mattered because no household could quietly rewrite Diana's wishes. Camilla felt the humiliation immediately. A private individual could reject a request from the sovereign's household, and Charles could not override her. The king had spent his life inside a system where position opened doors, yet this one remained closed. William assumed Eleanor would support him automatically, but she turned to the prince and warned that the estate belonged to his children's future, not to his grief, anger, or desire for control. Eleanor then revealed through the palace's recorded loan request that officials had recently asked to borrow several Diana-related pieces for an exhibition about royal continuity. The phrase meant a display linking past and present reigns, but the draft placed Diana's belongings inside a wider celebration of Charles and Camilla. Eleanor rejected it because the neutrality clause, a rule preventing the estate from serving another household's image, had been breached. Catherine supported the decision, believing George, Charlotte, and Louis should inherit memory without being forced into palace rivalry. Camilla requested 6 private minutes with Eleanor. She asked whether the retired judge had personally shaped the rejection to keep her away from Diana's legacy. Eleanor closed the file and answered, "Your intentions are not being judged. Your authority is being limited." The queen consort absorbed the words without replying, while Charles waited outside, and William remained silent across the corridor. Eleanor returned to the group with one final warning. The failed request had already activated automatic safeguards, and several privately owned items were about to be transferred from royal storage. No signature from Charles, William, or Camilla could delay process once it had begun. The boundary was no longer theoretical, because before the palace could recover, Diana's possessions began leaving rooms Camilla believed were still under royal control. The first consequence arrived before breakfast. Archive staff entered a secured Windsor storage room, carrying transfer cases, inventory sheets, and instructions bearing the estate protector's seal. No announcement was made. No reporters were present. Yet every box removed from the royal shelves carried the same devastating message. Diana's private legacy was leaving palace control, and Camilla could do nothing except watch the separation become real. Camilla heard about the transfer before anyone came to explain it. Under the automatic safeguard clause, a rule that moves protected property when its security or independence may be threatened, Diana's letters, photographs, jewelry records, and personal objects had to leave Windsor. The collection would remain inside an independent conservation facility until George, Charlotte, and Louis reached the ages named in the trust and completed a program designed to help them understand what they were inheriting. Charles reacted with anger, disguised as restraint. He asked the lawyers for a 48-hour delay, arguing that his wife deserved time to absorb the decision without facing public wounds. The request was denied through a recorded legal response, because royal intervention could itself break the estate rules. The king understood the cruelty of the position. His authority could protect ceremonies, households, and schedules, but it could not protect Camilla from this humiliation. The transfer list deepened the damage. One sealed case held Diana's private correspondence about William's future children, including letters written before George, Charlotte, or Louis had been born. Another inventory identified a sapphire piece long treated as part of the royal collection. The record showed it had been privately retained for Charlotte under Diana's arrangement, placing it beyond palace ownership. Study. Camilla reached the archive corridor as the final case was being wheeled away. She asked the archivist to stop and placed her fingers briefly on the lid. The official explained that the transfer could not legally be paused. She withdrew her hand, but the gesture betrayed what her voice concealed. To the queen consort, the departing case felt like proof that the palace still viewed her as an intruder inside Diana's memory. Camilla returned alone to her sitting room. She removed a brooch, set it beside an unopened breakfast tray, and told her dresser to cancel every engagement for the day. Charles waited outside, uncertain whether entering would comfort her or deepen the private shame. William learned of her collapse through a private call from the king. Instead of celebrating the estate's protection, the prince asked to meet Camilla alone, without Charles, Catherine, lawyers, or aides. The estate had divided them in public law, but behind one closed door, William and Camilla would finally confront the pain no document could settle. There were no lawyers in the room, no king, no advisors ready to soften a sentence or reinterpret a silence. William and Camilla sat opposite each other with Diana's name between them, carrying decades of blame, guilt, grief, and guarded resentment. For the first time, neither could hide behind duty. What happened next did not change the legal decision, but it changed the emotional meaning of everything surrounding it. William chose a small Windsor library and asked that the doors remain closed until they both agreed the conversation was finished. Camilla arrived expecting another warning, but the prince carried no papers and brought no legal aid. That mattered, because documents had already settled the estate. This meeting would decide whether the family could survive what the ruling had exposed. Camilla spoke first. She admitted the decision had devastated her, because it confirmed that, no matter how faithfully she served, part of the monarchy would always define her through Diana's suffering. The queen consort did not ask for the jewelry, letters, or photographs. She asked whether every locked door would forever be treated as proof that she had no moral place beside Charles or within the family he led. William listened without interrupting. He said his mother's protection of George, Charlotte, and Louis was not a final punishment against Camilla. It was an attempt to preserve a relationship Diana never lived long enough to build herself. The future king understood why that distinction mattered. His children deserved to meet their grandmother through her own words, not through the bitterness of an older generation. Camilla then revealed through her private recorded exchange with palace advisors that she had opposed the exhibition language linking Diana's possessions to her reign. Officials submitted the final wording before she reviewed it. William admitted he had believed she personally authorized the request, and that belief had sharpened every word he spoke during the legal briefing. Camilla's voice broke. She said she did not want what belonged to Diana. She wanted to stop feeling that every boundary proved she could never belong. William looked down before answering. That place cannot come from what belonged to her. The silence changed after that. William promised that Camilla's dignity would be protected, but Diana's estate would remain untouched and pass exactly as promised to George, Charlotte, and Louis. She accepted the line without challenging it. They left separately, but not as enemies. Beyond the palace gates, however, the legal decision had already escaped into public view. Neither understood how quickly judgment would follow. Inside Windsor, the anger had finally softened into truth, but outside, Diana's name was already moving across front pages, broadcasts, and gathering crowds. By midday, the private legal decision had become the only royal story Britain wanted to discuss. Broadcasters spoke of inheritance, memory, and the children who would one day receive Diana's most personal possessions. Supporters praised a grandmother's promise made before they were born. Critics called the arrangement a permanent rebuke to Camilla. And outside Kensington Palace, one silent gesture captured the public mood more powerfully than any headline. Charles approved a palace statement asking the public to respect every member of the family. William insisted that the same message clearly confirmed Diana's wishes and the legal separation of her private estate. A palace statement is an official public message issued in the monarch's name, and this one mattered because silence would allow others to define the decision. It also mattered because George, Charlotte, and Louis were children, not symbols waiting to be claimed by rival sides. Camilla felt the private understanding reached with William disappear beneath public judgment. Commentators described the ruling as her defeat, and the Queen Consort heard old accusations return in sharper language. William suffered for a different reason. The prince watched his children's names dominate broadcasts and feared that a family inheritance was becoming a national weapon. The following morning, the Daily Chronicle published 3 small gold nameplates, marked George, Charlotte, and Louis, beneath the headline, "Diana's Final Promise Kept." The fictional front page spread through stations, breakfast tables, and news programs within minutes. At Kensington Palace, crowds gathered beside the memorial gates. One young girl placed 3 white roses together and left a handwritten card for the grandchildren she never met. A national broadcaster then revealed through a documented summary supplied by the estate trustees that the collection contained educational recordings and private letters intended to introduce the children to Diana in her own words. Trustees are the people legally required to manage property for its beneficiaries, and their confirmation transformed public curiosity into emotion. Diana had not simply left objects, she had prepared a way to speak across time. Catherine acted before the attention could close around the children. She ordered tighter privacy protections for George, Charlotte, and Louis, and asked staff to keep public commentary away from their daily routines. Charles rejected advice, urging him to dispute the media's framing, knowing any attack would deepen Camilla's pain and make William more defensive. That evening, the family gathered for one final meeting. Diana's estate, Camilla's place, and the children's future would now receive a settlement no headline could rewrite. Everyone understood the stakes. The country had already delivered its emotional judgment, but the monarchy still needed to decide whether memory would remain a weapon or finally become an inheritance. The final meeting did not end with victory for one woman and defeat for another. It ended with a boundary, firm, painful, and finally understood. Diana's private estate would pass to George, Charlotte, and Louis exactly as promised. Camilla would neither control it nor be publicly humiliated by it. William would protect his mother's wishes without using them as an instrument of revenge. For once, the monarchy chose clarity over rivalry. Charles entered the Windsor meeting knowing authority could not rescue them. Camilla sat beside him, while William, Catherine, Eleanor Harcourt, and lawyers sat opposite. A settlement meeting is a legal discussion confirming rights and duties. It would decide whether Diana's legacy became a weapon or a protected inheritance. Eleanor opened the trust record. George would guard the estate's continuity. Charlotte would receive designated personal objects, and Louis would share its educational and family meaning. The structure protected them because memory without fairness could deepen royal division. Charles accepted that the sovereign held no authority over the estate. The king ordered royal departments to stop requesting access without trustee approval. William promised Diana's possessions would never humiliate Camilla, attack his father, or fuel household war. The prince would defend his mother without turning memory into revenge. Camilla admitted what had devastated her. The estate had never been hers to enter, yet she had mistaken exclusion from Diana's property for exclusion from the family. Catherine answered firmly. Dignity could not come from possessing Diana's history. It had to come from carrying one's own duty honestly. Camilla signed the acknowledgement and slid it toward William. He signed beneath her name and closed the folder quietly. Eleanor then read the handwritten sentence. Let William's children receive these things without anger, so they may know love before they inherit duty. William understood. Diana had not built the arrangement to preserve bitterness. She had built it so George, Charlotte, and Louis would not inherit the pain of her life. Charles took Camilla's hand, and this time she did not pull away. Diana's estate was protected. Her grandchildren became its unquestioned heirs, while Camilla's place was separated from the legacy she could never replace. The monarchy learned unity did not require every boundary to vanish. Sometimes survival demanded respect for the line between crown property and personal memory, between present duty and past pain. Diana's belongings would one day reach the grandchildren she never held, not as weapons from an old royal war, but as proof that even within a monarchy built on inheritance, the most powerful legacy is the one protected from resentment and delivered with love. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.